Hello and welcome back to the Ghost of Alcantra. So, last time we had the official reveal that everything so far has been told from Nick's perspective, just in different points of his life, or near death turns out. But now we're finally getting the perspective of Alexandria, so yeah, let's see. Part 3, Constellations. Nick, how can I bridge the gap from me to you? Not the gap of time, the depth of our feelings allowed us to overcome a decade of separation with ease. Not the gap between life and death, for lovers who long to reunite, the former always leads to the latter, whether they're patient or not. No, how can I bridge the gap between our feelings of the time we spent together? During my life, I spent my days blissfully unaware of the destructive potential that accompanies the forging of close relationships. I only believed in the power and promise of getting to understand and cherish another person. It was only after I died did I realize that the power and promise from love was only matched by its ability to destroy. I destroyed you, Nick. Our falling in love ruined you. I can only hope that those same feelings which have brought about your destruction can bring about your resurrection. It would be too much to ask that you forgive me. It would be cold and callous to ask you to move on. I know that simply isn't possible anymore, and as much as I hope for it, I won't ask you to accept that you would do our relationship all over again, knowing what it led to. Your feelings are your own, Nick. I've now seen what you feel. Believe me, I felt horrible, wretched beyond belief to see the extent and the vivacity of the torment I inflicted on you. I'll accept your feelings, Nick, but I ask that in return you accept mine. Because if you're unwilling to redo our time together, let it not be because of me. You do not speak for me. I am not the Ghost of Alcantra you have envisioned. I do not blame you. I do not want revenge. I do not want you punished. I am the Ghost of Alcantra who still loves you very much. You see, the gap between our feelings is very large indeed. How could two people who love each other as much as we do paint such different pictures of our time together? Maybe it's to be expected. After all, I am not you, and you are not me. There is no distance greater in the universe than the infinite chasm that separates one person from another. But even though that gap can never truly be bridged, I'll take a chance on trying to do so. Stories are what I knew best when I was alive, and so a story is what I will tell you in hopes that doing so will allow us to take even one step closer to one another. Very philosophical here. Makes sense, but... I'll draw lines between us, from one shining star to another, creating a constellation, connecting us in an infinite sea. May we shine together, forever and always, in the night sky. However, there's no need for repetition to lead to redundancy. Imagine how unsatisfying it would be to rehash a mystery story with known answers, when what needs to be told is a love story. There is much that lay unfinished between us, and so my story will utilize the us in dire need of catharsis. We'll take on Alexandria of 28 and Nick Fox of 27, and we'll tell the story of the summer of 1987, so that the us as we are now can turn regrets into hope. I had 3 regrets when I died. One was that I never kissed you. You know, a real kiss, not the pecks on the cheek and forehead we exchanged. Second, I never told you I loved you, and no, this doesn't count. Context is everything, Nick. Lastly, we never said goodbye. That has been my biggest regret. So let us remedy that. Here starts the beginning of our farewell. Let me not just be a memory, let me be a story. Here is the story of Alexandria Thorne. Oh boy. June 7th, 19XX. Of course, that soundtrack. I had never known freedom. The antiquated halls of the Thorn Mansion served as my prison walls, the staff members as my guards. I suppose I should be grateful. Not everyone's prisons were as luxurious as mine. My years were spent in comfort, surrounded by lavish decorations and expensive china, and far too much space between them. I had people at my beck and call. Whatever Alexandria Thorne wanted, as long as it was permitted by her father, she could have it. I had everything a person could need and nothing that a person would want. If you were to believe my father, I was a parting miracle. My late mother, Yina Thorne, had left for the family. I believed this lie until I was around 12. As I got older, I pieced together that I was not the beloved daughter of Elga and Yina Thorne, but that my existence was a testament to the extent of Elga's love for another woman and his hatred of Yina. I could only believe the drivel that I was to be under lock and key because of family traditions for so long. It was easy enough to figure out that Elga Thorne wanted to hide evidence of an affair and its resulting murder. My father is simply that type of person, the type of person who places the value and legacy of the Thorne name above all else. The guilt from the murder of a spouse was easy enough to deal with in comparison to the shame from tarnishing the Thorne name. My education was handled by private tutors employed by my father, and I was also allowed access to my father's personal library, which had to contain thousands of books. I don't even think my father liked reading all that much. A library as a status symbol? I mean, why not? But could also be that he inherited it from his father. Having a large library was merely something that rich and influential people had to have to appear educated. I was merely the beneficiary of avarice. I became an avid reader and lover of stories, mostly out of necessity, because I had nothing else to do besides my useless training in formal matters. I spent my days within my imagination, but even the imagination of a child has limits. My creative limits were reached because of the sheer amount of free time I had. I was very bored. I turned to stories as a way to pass the time, and they became my way of coping with the world I knew. I only understood what the world beyond the Thorn Gates was like from an academic perspective. While I didn't grow up without human interaction, understanding the circumstances, situations, and thoughts and feelings of other people was mostly foreign to me. There's only so much you can know from one's own experience, even more so when that experience was as limited as mine. You see, interaction doesn't always equate with connection. Most of the Thorn staff were considerably older than me, and while they looked after me like I was family, the difference in our positions always served as a barrier that separated us from genuine connection. That's sad. I mean, I get what she's saying. Of course there's gonna be some kind of separation, but especially for a child, and like we were told that the staff stays on for years and years, right? That they still manage to stay disconnected, that's a shame. I was a Thorn and the staff were paid by my father. The closeness I could have with the staff was always strangled because of those two details. My life was stagnant. Each day was a mirror of the last. Things didn't change until May 30th of this year. As horrible as my father was, I never doubted he loved me in his own messed up, guilt-ridden way. My existence was proof of that. Okay, first time we're seeing him. On the 30th of May, he summoned my brother Vlad and I to a meeting. In that meeting, he acknowledged the unfairness of my circumstances and said that we ought to change them. He proposed that I be allowed out into Alcantra under the guise that I was visiting relatives. We'd utilize the summer festival as my first day out. The condition was that I was to tell no one I was a member of the Thorn family, and that the details of the permanent freedom were to be worked out later. I accepted his conditions without a second thought. I didn't hate living, but my life was empty. There is only one dream possible for those bound in a cage, and it is to leave it. Only outside the thorn gates could I even dare to dream, and then maybe make those dreams come true. To my surprise, Vlad objected. Vlad and I were reasonably close when we were kids. We played catch and tag on the grounds, we talked about books. As far as I knew things about sibling dynamics, ours was healthy and normal. Vlad had even expressed support to the idea that I should be allowed to leave the Thorn Mansion when we were younger. This was bold given the relationship between Vlad and my father. My father was horrible to Vlad. He was ruthless, unforgiving, and extremely demanding. I never saw it happen, but I knew my father also beat Vlad. Vlad had once been a nice boy. In his transition to a man, he dropped the niceness. Vlad's naivety of what was expected of the Thorn heir allowed Vlad to tolerate his treatment when he was younger. Unfortunately, it was inevitable that Vlad changed as he got older. As such, Vlad became worse and worse of a person, and we grew further and further apart as a result. Vlad slowly became incorporated into the affairs of the family, and eventually he started running them. As far as I knew, he never changed his public behavior. It was only in the private sphere, in the secrecy of the Thorn Mansion, could one realize that Vlad was slowly breaking. Just as it had been with my father, he slowly became consumed by the Thorn name, enraptured by the potential that name held for the heir apparent. My father played no small part in this transition. Vlad had thought he would never be good enough a father. He was to live up to the Thorn name as the head, or be labeled a failure. Vlad's a complicated guy. There is no eloquent way to put it. He has both mommy and daddy issues. He was desperate for the approval of his father and thought that succeeding as the head was the only way to get it. And the reason he was desperate for this approval was because he had no other standard to judge the success of his life. When Yena Thorn was alive, she had treated Vlad as trash, his own words. He had no love from a mother to balance out the contempt from his father. Thus, with nothing else to turn to, he turned to the contempt of his father as a standard to establish happiness. Vlad's a man walking on a razor's edge, just one wrong step away from being sliced open, revealing the pitiful being inside. His public mask is all decency, a facade meant to encourage good relations. However, his actions serve to destroy others and build up the family. Succeed as the heir to my father, or die trying. That was the mantra Vlad centered his life around now. There's nothing scarier than a man who has nothing to gain and everything to lose. Vlad objected to my freedom on the grounds that my public appearance posed a threat to the family's legacy. What he really meant was that my appearance posed a threat to the smooth transition of power from my father to him. Vlad said that he would figure out a way to give me my freedom once he was head, but until then, our family should be careful with the transition in the next couple of years. What a stupid justification for continuing to ruin my life. To my surprise, before I could object to Vlad's selfish reasoning, my father denied Vlad himself. He then matter-of-factly went on to discuss the arrangements for my excursions into Alcantra, starting from the summer festival. I barely kept up because I was astounded that my father so nonchalantly brushed aside Vlad's opinion. I didn't really believe in my father's moral character, but I wasn't going to object to whatever guilty feelings compelled him to try and make amends now. Vlad was angry and disappointed, but he never stood up to father. He just left the meeting after my father had made his decision. I was to utilize the secret passages, utilized by the family when they wanted to get into town covertly. The Thorn family controlled the mines from when they founded the town and still had control of them to this day. I was given instructions on how to behave if approached about my living situation. The staff were briefed on how to act if they saw me in town and were sternly reminded that there were severe consequences for revealing who I was. I didn't know what those consequences were, but given the Thorn family body count, they probably were pretty bad. And so, on June 6th, I entered the family's secret passage with assistance from Blade and emerged into a wooded clearing several hundred meters away from the center of town. I was instructed on how to keep the entrance hidden, and then I was on my way, taking my first steps into the real world. I was now in the world where people laughed, cried, hurt each other, and fell in love. It's interesting. I mean, we don't know what went through the father's head there. It's such a risk to let her go alone, but then yeah, they couldn't send anyone with her to conceal that she's a thorn. I knew Alcantra was a small town, but to someone whose whole world to that point was one large building and a large yard, Alcantra seemed enormous, staggeringly so. 5,000 people may as well have converted to 10 million on the Alexandria Thorn scale. It didn't feel like I had just been allowed into Alcantra, but that I had been introduced to the entire world. Despite that, my first day of freedom didn't live up to the unrealistically high expectations I had. I was an alien, someone who had been thrown into this realm from another. The world of books and polite social niceties woefully underprepared me for the world of actual human beings. I had taken for granted the difficulty of the task of walking up to another human being and speaking with them. I don't remember, was she allowed to watch TV or movies at least? Because books is of course very different. And while she has interacted with the staff, yeah, of course it's gonna be quite limited and different than to interacting with just random people on the street or in shops or something. And also, like, just watching them on the TV is also still different than doing it yourself, but, you know. The people of Alcantra were all preoccupied with the business of living their own lives. What was an intruder to do to integrate themselves? If there was an answer to that question, I didn't know it. I became a spectator and nothing more. I was too afraid. I stood on the sidelines, watching the fun other people had, resigning myself to dreaming about being a part of this world just as I had before, just a little closer to it physically than I had been previously. My father had picked the day of the summer festival because everyone would be too preoccupied to pay any mind to me. I could camouflage myself along with all the tourists and visitors nicely. I went to the festival, of course, but it was far too overwhelming for me. I was unprepared for the cacophony that emerges from the aggregation of people, and the mixture of bodies and voices ended up making me a little nauseous. I still had a desire to see the famous fireworks display, so as evening encroached, I left the crowds in search of a quieter venue to watch. I wondered if this was the best life was going to get for me, and the most people would ever know about me. What was I like? That was hard to say, since I was the most biased perspective around on myself, but if I had to take a stab, I'd say I was a little sassy, thorny as my name implied, barbs built up over years of tiredness from my situation. I was a little snobby and full of myself because my position demanded that others treat me like I was very important, but there was an earnestness to myself as well. I appreciated more in life than most. I knew better than anyone that you had to take what you could get from life. And would you know any of this by seeing the Alexandria Thorn who walked around Alcantra during the summer festival? Absolutely not. you would see a stammerer whose heart hammered in time with the panic in her mind. Shy and frightened, just one nervous blonde in a northern ocean of blonde girls. I was worried this was how I peaked. I found a spot along the canal that seemed nicer for firework viewing and sat down, reflecting on my sad thoughts. A short while later, I met him, who with a casual, "You're here to see the fireworks," offered me my first invitation into the real world. I acted awkward, defensive and guarded, partly because I had to hide who I was, and partly because I was just so surprised. But inside, I'm not sure I had ever been happier. Happy. Was it a new feeling for me? I had known contentment. I had known acceptance. Had I known happiness? I'm not sure I had until that night. I doubt the gesture meant anything to him. It was simply one act of kindness among many in his life. But that's not to devalue kindness. Kindness is invaluable. You never know when your average act of kindness might change someone's life like mine was changed that night. He asked me questions, and I responded like a prick. I was a mess. I had to balance the conditions tied to my freedom with the novelty of interacting with a non-Thorn Mansion member for the first time. How did people do this numerous times every day? 1,000 curses upon whatever genetic or environmental factor led my default responses in conversation to be what they were. Thankfully, Nick didn't seem to be put off enough to try and get away from me. We watched the fireworks together. I could tell a lot was going on in his head, perhaps trying to figure out who the strange girl was. As for myself, I was too overwhelmed by the fireworks in the sky, the implosions in my brain, and the explosions in my heart to do much but take in the moment. When we parted, I unloaded on him an explanation that I guess was supposed to justify my previous behavior, a burst of vulnerability that probably surprised him given the guardedness of my previous behavior. I doubt he knew where it was coming from. With that outburst and a farewell, June 6th came to a close. I had never known freedom, but for the first time in my life, I got a taste, albeit a small one, of freedom. So not used to seeing a Nick sprite. Of course we do, but yeah, just not used to it. That was yesterday, a lifetime ago. I had a mission today. I was going to reunite with Nick Fox. He was my lifeline from this mansion to Alcantra, and I think I had a decent excuse for re-establishing a connection. We watched the fireworks together. We had shared a moment. If you only valued life as a whole, most people lived very small and meaningless lives. It is only in the moments, in each little slice of a life, where any notion of value can be found. I was going to place a lot of faith in that moment we shared. I still had the issue of how I was going to meet him again. As a Thorn, I could easily arrange our reunion. A snap of my fingers, and I could have all the information on Nick Fox I wanted. But that was creepy. Okay, I have to laugh because these days you kinda can have that too, as long as the person is quite active online. Well, my stalkerdom and desperate behavior was going to begin and end with walking around the canal area like an idiot, hoping he'd show up. I was getting ready to go out when there was a knock on my door. It must have been a staff member. "Come in." An older staff member named Clarence walked in and gave a small little bow. "What's up?"
"I'm guessing you haven't heard the news?"
"What news?" He looked grim. I'm guessing the news wasn't good.
"Someone was killed last night."
"In Alcantra?"
"Yeah, it was Marina Reddick."
Marina Reddick. I knew the name. She had previously been employed by the Thorns. More scandalously, There were rumors in the mansion that there had been something going on between her and my father, and even now it was an open secret that my father still had money sent to her. Whether it was sent by genuine care for her or to keep her quiet, no one knew. But with her death, one would immediately suspect the latter. I responded in a whisper. Any evidence it was an orders of my father or brother?
My lady.
He looked around frantically, like the ghosts of my ancestors were dying all over again from the shock of what I had just asked.
You mustn't say things like that.
Come on, it's the most obvious explanation.
But you're not supposed to say it, especially not in the mansion.
I understood. He'd be fired for gossiping about his employer's potential murderous habits. I nodded solemnly. I understand. I won't say another word. Based on my father's recent behavior, I doubted he had it in him anymore and that his most heinous days were behind him. Could Vlad kill someone? I thought so. Vlad had been growing into the role of Thornhead for a while now and was enamored with the power that position held. But I thought Vlad wasn't stupid enough to rock the boat before his transition to headship. Even so, the culprit really only could be my father or Vlad. Okay, so she decided that immediately. Like not even looking into the case a little further first. Just immediately. Okay. I won't say another word, but may I inquire into the details about the murder? I was told what had been publicly reported, which was the state of the body, the time they suspected the death, and the door to Marina's house being unlocked. Then, in a hushed voice, Clarence told me that Vlad, my father, and some of the staff were going to be interviewed by the police. Will you be okay?
Oh yes, thank you for your concern. I'll be fine.
That's good to hear. Are they planning to interrogate people in the mansion?
I don't think so, not yet anyway. They'll be taken to the station for inquiry.
So I wasn't in any immediate danger of being found. That was a pity. Imagine how convenient it would be to have my freedom granted to me because I was discovered in a police raid.
Are you planning on going out today, Miss Thorne?
I am.
I hope it's a wonderful outing.
Thank you. I hope so too.
However, your father requests that you see him before going out.
I rolled my eyes internally. Of course he did. I understand, Clarence. Thank you for telling me.
You're welcome, Miss Thorne. I hope you have a great day.
You too, Clarence. He bowed again and left. I finished my preparations and headed to meet with my father. I bounded towards my father's study like a stone skipping across water. I heard some whispering from the staff on my way to my father's study. My cheerful attitude provided a stark dissonance to the sullen, melancholy mood of the mansion. I imagined the chiding I might have received had my father seen me.
Someone has been killed, Alexandria. Why are you so happy?
But I knew happiness was a scarce resource for people like myself, so I kept my head above the clouds, my feet over the water. I knocked on the door of my father's study. I then contorted my facial features into the downer expression he was expecting.
Come in.
My father looked weary, like he hadn't slept. Given the news, it was likely he hadn't. He would have been among the first people informed of what had happened to Marina Radek. His eyes had a sad look to them, and I realized that Marina Radek's death meant something personal to him. He was genuinely upset. Perhaps the rumors about him and Marina Radek had been true. My father was a monster, but even monsters have hearts. All of them? Not sure about that, but okay. Maybe this one. I responded accordingly, given his obvious sadness. Are you okay, father?
Yes, I'm all right, Alexandria. Just a little melancholy is all.
I'm sorry. I heard about Marina Radek. It was horrible to hear.
Yes, it really was horrible. She didn't deserve what happened to her. She was a loyal worker of the family and a good friend of mine. I will miss her dearly.
He cleared his throat, clearly embarrassed. The rivers of all rumors have a source. There likely was something previously between my father and Marina Radic.
Anyway, thank you for coming, Alexandria.
I sat down at the chair in front of his desk. I presumed this was about the murder and the investigation, but I wouldn't mind talking about Marina Radic. It might help you feel better. My father chuckled.
Oh, and what do you know of easing sadness?
I jabbed my thumb in the general direction of the library. I'm well read. Most stories are either about love or death, and this one is at least about one of those. Is at least about one of those. Okay. My father raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything else about the insinuation.
That's kind of you, Alexandria, but I'll be okay.
If you say so.
Regarding the investigation.
He gave me a warm smile, something I rarely saw.
I wanted to tell you to not worry about it. You go out and enjoy yourself. The troublesome reputation our family has gotten itself into isn't your problem.
You mean it? No hiding me or anything?
We'll figure something out if the mansion is inspected.
I was a little suspicious. Elga Thorne and warm smiles were an unusual combination. This seemed uncharacteristically lackadaisical. So, what's the catch?
To what?
For letting me go out. You have to be getting something out of this.
It's not enough for you when I say that I had a change of heart, that I realized how much I've wronged you.
It's not enough for me. You're not a good enough person for that to happen.
Oh, so she's upfront about that. Okay.
Despite the reckless provocation, my father maintained his warm smile and chuckled.
I deserve the skepticism, no doubt, and you're not entirely wrong either.
So, what changed your mind?
Believe me when I say this, Alexandria, but I would not have done this if I hadn't been living with guilt all these years. I've had enough regrets for a lifetime, but there was a catalyst for my decision.
Which was?
A possibility I had to consider.
And that possibility was?
Just a future outcome I think I would like to avoid. That's all you need to know.
I rolled my eyes and scoffed at the secrecy. Of course he wouldn't tell me what he was getting out of this. That's just how Elga Thorne operated.
I mean it, Alexandria. I've ruined your life enough already. Let me do my best to make amends.
He leaned over across the study.
Did you enjoy yourself yesterday?
The truthful answer was that it was sort of a mixed bag, but it was an optimistically mixed bag. No one ever considers the temporal component of a lie. Who was I to answer for the Alexandria Thorne of yesterday? That was so long ago. The messy feelings of yesterday, all the hope and disappointment and hope, were best answered like this for the Alexandria of today. I had a great time.
Good.
He made a shooing gesture towards the door.
Go have fun. I mean it.
I nodded, got up, and headed towards the door.
And Alexandria?
I turned around. Yes?
I'm sorry for everything.
How do you respond to an overdue apology from a perpetrator who has wronged you your entire life? I doubted that anything could be done that would sufficiently make up for what he had done to me. Even still, it was rare to see a bad person recognize and acknowledge their badness. What should I say? Words were entirely insufficient to capture the entangled web of feelings I had about my father's apology. I didn't know if I was happy or irritated or exasperated or relieved. The response I ended up going with captured none of the confusion I felt. No worries, Father. Thinking of proper retribution and reparation was a task for a later time. My past was bad, but it was the past. My future was much brighter. I decided I would focus on that for now.
Yeah, what do you say to that? No worries is not it really.
But I finished my preparations for heading out by asking the staff members if they had heard of a Nick Fox. They told me that his uncle was the detective investigating Marina Raddick's murder. That wasn't much of a conversation starter, so I resigned myself to having to work with my woeful social skills and headed towards the secret passage. I arrived at the canal front a little after 1 in the afternoon. I was one half of a 2-person party who had made no arrangements to meet again. In my head there was a growing sense of "I am very stupid" as I walked up and down the canal, realizing that I had placed an unhealthy burden on destiny to reunite Nick and I. I walked up and down the canal front for about 2 hours, masquerading as a fitness walker while the sun laughed at me. I settled under a gazebo for some shade and stared glumly over at the canal, wallowing in mild misery over my character flaws, when destiny, or Nick's addiction to canals, finally intervened. I heard a voice from behind me.
What's up, Alexandria? Funny seeing you here again.
Funny? Funny? This isn't funny at all, Nick Fox. You've kept a lady waiting 2 hours. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to find you, simulate the whole conversation and all the routes it could go in my head. Simulate the whole conversation and all the routes it could go in my head, and then approach extremely prepared. I'm not ready. This is too sudden. I managed a stiff response while my brain entered panic mode. Hello, Nick.
You, like looking at the canal?
All I could was nod. I think I liked looking at the canal.
You're visiting the area? If so, there's a nice waterfall across the bridge.
Yes, waterfalls. Waterfalls are cool. I can talk about waterfalls. Wait, no. He asked if I'm visiting. Am I visiting? Yes, I am. That's my story. What if I screw it up under pressure?
Let's play it safe.
That's none of your business. Fuck. That was way too harsh sounding. Why was this so hard?
Guessing you still don't have a last name?
I'm sorry, I actually can't tell you that one. Not for you to hear anyway. Why did I have to say it like that? He's just making normal conversation. People engage in playful banter. What's wrong with you, Alexandria? Can't you respond normally? I needed to turn this ship around.
Well, it was good to see you, but I better be heading out.
Wait, I know. The murders, that's a conversation topic. A morbid one, but very relevant. That's right, his uncle is the detective on the case. We can work with this. Wait, Nick. He turned around, stopping his retreat towards his bike. This was my chance. I take it you've heard about the recent murder?
Of course I have.
Okay, let's do this. I gave an exaggerated flick of my hair, a physical expression I was fond of because it made me seem dignified. Actually, I'm somewhat of a detective aficionado myself. Wasn't I supposed to talk about his uncle? Whoops. But Nick looked impressed.
You're a detective?
No, I'm a detective aficionado. I like detective stories.
Oh, that's cool. My uncle is a detective, actually. He's in Alcantra now, working on the case.
Perfect. I masterfully guided the conversation back to safe waters. So I've heard.
You've heard? I thought you weren't from around here.
And right back to dangerous waters we go. I'm well informed. Anyway, I was thinking that as a detective aficionado, I could make myself useful to your uncle. Nick looked at me a bit incredulously.
I think you've read too many detective novels.
You don't know that. I mean, you don't know that I couldn't be helpful.
For once, I was glad I was a thorn. I was bluffing, but if I looked into it, I could probably use my connections at the mansion to glean some info relevant to the case. Hell, the most likely outcome was that my brother was involved, so surely I could figure something out. So you want to meet my uncle?
No, actually, I'd like to propose a deal.
I pointed at myself.
Here we have me, hopelessly abandoned to the cruel northern woods of the Upper Peninsula.
You are abandoned?
Let me finish. Here we have me, the picture of the isolated, lonely intellect. And here we have you, the picture of the everyday busy man, the local expert on all things Alcantra.
I'm not particularly busy or an expert on all things Alcantra.
Thus, given our situations, I have a proposal that could benefit both relevant parties. If you were to act as my local tour guide to Alcantra, and in doing so, help me get acquainted with the relevant social habits of the area, I will offer you my keenest insights into the recent unpleasant events so that you may relay them to your uncle.
Nick looked like he was holding back a laugh, but I think it was a laugh closer to laughing with me rather than at me. Not that I was laughing. What was that supposed to be? Mild pretension was my default state, but that bastardization of my usual temperament made me out to be on drugs. To my relief, Nick gave me a big smile. I hadn't really thought about it before, and I wouldn't call him a knockout, but he was pretty handsome. You know, you could have just asked me if you wanted to be friends. I spluttered out loud.
Ooh, what? Who said anything about that?
You don't want that?
I'll think about it.
He laughed out loud this time. No need for a deal or anything. I'd be happy to show you Alcantra. I was ecstatic he was so understanding, but I was also a little miffed that he was so straightforward about it in light of all the mental gymnastics I had to go through to justify furthering connection.
You're sure?
I'm sure.
And just so you're aware, I insinuated nothing about being friends. I merely advanced a beneficial proposal for both of us.
You're such a princess. Princess? Was he onto me? Did I accidentally reveal something that connected me to the Thorns?
Princess?
Yeah, the way you act. It's not a bad thing. It's kind of cute, honestly. Cute? What a flirt. First the offer of friendship, now we're already at the stage of shady compliments? Shady, really?
Anyways, Nick, we are acquaintances.
I stuck my hand out.
We have a deal. You'll show me Alcantra, and if I can provide info on the cases, I will. Deal?
He smiled and shook my hand. Have it your way, you princess. Deal. It was just a handshake, but it felt like I had made a big step in my life. Spin the globe and each and every perspective you'd find would paint the whole world in different hues. The value of accomplishments in life is relative to the perspective you view them from. For me, that handshake signified my acceptance into the world. For Nick, he agreed to help out a weird girl. Both of those could be beautiful things.
So, you mentioned a waterfall?
Oh yeah, it's across the bridge, up in the woods. He pointed at the general direction across the canal. But it'd be quite a hike. We'd have to take my bike there, it's too far to walk. Then we'd have to hike up a trail to see the falls. He pointed towards my dress. And you're not really dressed for the part.
What, you think I can't walk in a dress?
No, I meant I wouldn't want you to ruin your dress. To mimic his language, it was cute that he was concerned with practical matters like proper hiking attire. As for myself, practicality be damned. I was too happy. Clothes can be replaced, precious memories could not.
I'll be fine. I like hiking.
I had no idea if I liked hiking. I had never gone hiking before.
Nick still looked unsure, but he agreed.
Okay, well, let's get on the bike and head over then. It's a great view. I'm sure you'll love it.
I had never actually ridden a bike before, so the prospect excited me. I walked over and stood on the bars on the back that looked like where I was supposed to stand, then looked over at Nick. Thank you, Nick. Ready when you are.
So began my new life.
We crossed the bridge from Alcantra to Amatra, riding 2 tandem on a 1-person bike. I found out I didn't fear heights while crossing the bridge. For someone like myself, whose head was often in the clouds, my only fear was coming back down to the ground.
So, Alexandria, what am I allowed to know about you?
Girls don't like nosy guys.
Guys don't like girls who are too secretive.
Well, I won't be too secretive then. Start with an easy conversation starter like, what do you want to do with your life?
Very easy. Alexandria, nobody starts a conversation with a topic like that. An interview maybe, like a job interview, but not, yeah.
I would though, and that's what's important.
Fine then, what do you want to do with your life?
I don't know what I want to do. Until recently, it seemed like there was nothing I could do.
I think we all feel like that sometimes. We get into our own heads, make it hard to see the positives. Nick must have thought I was talking figuratively, but I was being literal. I had never thought about the future, because I never thought I would end up having one.
As for what I like doing, I like reading.
Oh yeah, that's right, you mentioned the detective novels. I was never much of a reader, honestly.
Never too late to start.
We began heading east towards the trail that would lead to the waterfall.
Say, Nick, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Why did you agree to my proposal?
What do you mean, why? You don't think you'd be fun to hang out with?
I think that by most objective standards, I'm pretty weird, and I know my request is kind of a pain.
He thought about it for a bit. Promise not to laugh?
I promise.
Well, when we first met, you had such a sad look on your face.
You mean you're just into sad girls? That's so gross.
Oh, would you let me finish? Anyway, I want to believe that people are good for each other, despite how different we all are. But despite feeling like that, I'm not sure I've ever really made much of a difference in someone's life. I'm generally an optimist, but when it comes to myself, I'm definitely a pessimist.
So, you wanted to make a difference in my life?
Not when we first met. I was just trying to be considerate, you know, hoping the fireworks might cheer you up from whatever was making you feel down. Then, when we met today, it was really obvious that you were putting on a front when you proposed your deal. I asked myself, why would someone do that? I tried to put myself in your shoes. Then I realized that was kind of a stupid thing to do, since I knew nothing about you. Well, you know, then I thought that maybe I should get to know you. It was the thought that maybe, just maybe, that meeting each other was good for both of us. I was reeling from the apparent obviousness of my proposal deal as a bluff, but I responded anyway.
Good for both of us? What are you getting out of this?
Well, you're fun to be around, that's one thing. I don't know how we could say such embarrassing things so easily. Maybe I just wanted to feel better about myself.
You say that like that's a bad thing.
Isn't it?
Feeling good about being nice isn't self-righteous. As the person you've helped out, I can let you know that I'm very appreciative of it.
I realized that I had actually never thanked Nick for agreeing to show me around Alcantra, for offering to be my friend.
So, thanks.
You're welcome.
He pulled up to a trail on the left side of the road and started biking up. We went up the gravelly path and towards the top. Once we reached the top, he chained the bike to a light pole. I got off and looked over at Nick fiddling with a bike lock. "So, you want to make a positive difference in my life, huh?" He looked at me a little warily.
Do you have to put it like that?
"You're off to a good start." I turned around and headed towards the trail to the waterfall, which was very clearly demarcated. "Let's go see that waterfall." Thankfully, the trail wasn't serious hiking, so my dress didn't affect me much. Despite being the pampered princess I was in pretty good shape. Nick attempted to behave gentlemanly, offering to help me up ledges or over large branches and the like, but I was wary of the casual contact he kept offering. The man just kept throwing out his hand at me like it was just a hand. The fool didn't realize that skinship like that could mean an awful lot to us sheltered folk. Shaking hands for a deal? All business. Lending a hand during a hike? Scandalous. By the time we reached the top of the trail to see the waterfall, I had ignored so many extended hand offers with "I'm alright" that Nick's self-confidence was probably somewhere beneath the ground. I felt a little bad about it, given that his wholesome speech earlier was tantamount to admitting that he had low self-confidence about his positive impact on others, but I was not yet accustomed to that sort of casual contact. Each and every touch still meant a lot to me. The waterfall itself wasn't all that impressive, at least not comparatively to the waterfalls I had seen and read about through books and maps, but there is something uniquely magnificent about the smaller but realer scale of everyday natural phenomena. "Too bad I didn't bring a camera."
We can always come back another time if you want to take some pictures.
"The most precious images are the ones we store in our heads anyway. Film can never live up to the images in our memory."
Next time I'll bring a camera.
"Oh, you better let me handle that."
Why's that?
I thought I could reward Nick for his efforts in assisting me today by offering him a little hint of my background. "Actually, my relatives, way back when, were filthy loaded. I have a lot of money." Nick nodded his head like that wasn't surprising. I could almost hear the sarcastic, fitting for a princess like you, reply. "So, when we go see Alcantra, we're free to go all out."
What do you mean?
I grabbed a small pouch I had attached to the side of my dress. I waggled the pouch in front of him. "You're such a sentimental sap about what you're getting out of this, and it's very sweet, but it's not gonna cut it for me. You let me handle the expenses of our adventures." Nick's face slowly morphed into one of horror, and I laughed as I started walking back down the trail. He scurried after me, muttering some traditional chivalrous sentiments that I ignored. I had a good time today, much too good a time, and I was starting to dream. We returned back to the gazebo a little after sunset. I hadn't thought about it, but a curfew had never been established for me.
So, when should we meet next?
"How about tomorrow? I know you can't have anything to do if you're willing to spend your time with me."
I don't know if that was more insulting to me or to you.
"I'm an equal opportunist."
Okay, tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon it is.
I nodded, but there was something I still wanted to clear with him. I just want to make sure you know what you're getting into."
I'm just showing you around Alcantra, right?
"Yes, well, that's the easy part. I'm the hard part."
He laughed. You're not hard to deal with.
"Yes, well, I have a lots of issues." I couldn't figure out a good way to insinuate my family problems.
It's okay. I can handle some issues.
"Even, really bad ones?" I just want to make sure you're prepared.
How bad are we talking?
Potentially catastrophic and devastating.
Oh boy, she wasn't wrong, was she? Well, we'll see how bad your issues are, and then I'll see if you're worth dealing with them.
Nick meant it humorously, but I grimaced internally at his response. I was realizing that the continued success of our relationship ultimately meant being candid with him about my background. Being his genuine friend was something I really wanted, and I couldn't hide who I was indefinitely. Yes, we'll see then. He gave me a smile and waved his hand.
See you later, Alexandria.
Bye, Nick. I waved back and began returning to the secret passage entrance. Today was the day I made a friend, but in addition to the gains that come with friendship, I now faced the troubles as well. I didn't want to be a mystery to him. I wanted to be both Alexandria and the Thorn. Joyous in my heart, mildly anxious in my head, I returned to the mansion through the secret passage. When I reached the end of the passage, I found Vlad waiting for me. He was leaning against the side of the wall, looking like he hadn't a care in the world, like he didn't have a town to run. Over the last couple of years, my brother had begun to rival my father for the most powerful person in Alcantra. Given this, it struck me as odd that he was waiting for me. Affection for his sister was something he had forsaken in the last couple of years. He would not meet with me unless there was something for him to gain from our meeting. What are you doing here, Vlad? He looked over at me, a look of mock offense on his face.
What? I can't wait for my sister to hear how our second day in Alcantra went.
You don't care about that.
That's not true at all.
He turned off his fake look of mocking. His expression became much more difficult to decipher.
Actually, I care about your activities in Alcantra quite a lot.
Don't you have better things to do? He thought about it for a minute.
No, not really.
He crossed his arms and examined me.
So, how are things going with Nick Fox?
I could feel the blood draining from my face. Are you spying on me? He pointed a finger to his chest and mouthed the word me like it was a silly idea.
Of course not, but I'm connected. Better than anyone else in Alcantra.
I crossed my arms back at him in an attempt to compose myself. I wouldn't let him frighten me. Yes, things are going fine with Nick. He's a good guy. Vlad nodded approvingly.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm happy for you.
I scoffed. No, you're not. Vlad raised an eyebrow.
You think I'm lying? We both know you always deserved happiness. Happiness isn't something that you should have to be permitted to have. I'm genuinely glad that you finally get to live the life you deserved. Honestly, you're too forgiving of Father.
He was right, though something didn't make sense about what he said. If you're so happy for me, then why did you object to my freedom? Vlad nodded at me.
Right, that's what I wanted to talk about.
So whatever he wanted to tell me was something he didn't want others to hear, given the location of our current talk.
You know why I objected. There's a possibility I could be the acting head as soon as next year. Your existence represents a threat to that transition. It is not your freedom I object to, it is the timing.
What a fat hypocrite! You could care less about my happiness, as if knowing Father had an affair would affect your transition to head.
You and I both know that it's not only the affair that's to hide, but his murder of Yena Thorn.
Vlad raised his voice, and I glared at him. I kept glaring at him until Vlad lost interest in our staring contest and started examining the nails on his hand. And then, like it was just a passing, casual idea, he came out with this.
Anyway, If I find out you've revealed your thorn to someone, I'll kill you.
I stared at him, stunned, trying to grasp the threat he had just levied at me, tossed at me so casually, while he looked at his fingernails like they were more interesting than the threat of my death. I recalled today's news. Marina Radic had been killed. I had thought Vlad wasn't stupid enough to kill anyone, but... You mean... did you kill Marina Radic? He kept looking at his nails and smirked.
I didn't say that. I don't confess to the murder of Marina Radic. But I do confess that I am perfectly capable of murder.
Having grasped what he had said to me, defiance raged within me. Did you just hear yourself, Vlad? You threatened to kill me, your own sister.
Indeed I did.
You would do that?
I would.
You know that murdering your sister wouldn't exactly enable a smooth transition to being the head? He nodded like I was finally making some sense.
You're right, I should be more specific. Let me clear things up. If things are not looking good for my transition to the head, for whatever reason, I'm taking the Thorn family down with me. That means you and Father, and anyone who gets in my way. So don't bother telling Father about our conversation. I know you have a masochistic fondness for that man. There is no one I'd like dead more than him. I'd be glad for the excuse.
It wasn't fear that was building inside me, but rather a trembling fire that began burning brighter and brighter at the sheer stupidity that served as a justification for my potential murder. You would really kill your sister for power? Vlad stopped playing with his nails, looked up, and glared back at me.
For power? I thought you, Alexandria, of all people, would understand what this all means for me. It's so that my whole life has not been a waste. It hasn't been so easy for me like it has been for you. I've taken the burden of succeeding the Thorn name, while you were free to go read books. All the torment, all the beatings, all the scorn that loveless life I led, it was all for naught if I don't become the head. If I don't become a successor far beyond what Father could dream of.
Easy? Easy? You dare call my life easy?
Yes, your life was easy.
You think being locked away your whole life, never getting to see life beyond the gates of our mansion, is easy?
Yes, I do. Father loved you like he never loved me. You weren't alive for Yena's scorn. You weren't around for the beatings I received from Father's wrath like I was to blame for his moral failures.
Blame for his moral failures? Was Vlad implying that his birth was also the product of an affair? That question lingered in my mind only for an instant. I was simply too furious to care. Oh yes, let's argue about which child of Elga Thorn was more abused, as if that's any justification for threatening to kill.
There is no moral justification.
Oh, so you're above morality now?
No, I simply don't care.
I didn't respond, but continued glaring, like self-awareness on his part would lead me to take his side.
Alexandria, I'm broken beyond repair already. Believe me, I know that becoming the head and becoming more ruthless, more successful than any previous head, won't fix me. But we all need something to hope for, right? Some reason to keep going. And as stupid as it is, that's my reason.
You're right, that is a stupid reason. Perhaps the stupidest reason I've ever heard. Vlad smiled at that.
Anyway, you don't tell anyone about you being a thorn or our conversation tonight, and nothing bad happens. The shattered fragments of this man becomes the head, lives a life of unhappiness, and all is well.
You really think you can just brush this all aside?
I don't think you want to test me, Alexandria.
He was right, I didn't. I wasn't frightened, just disgusted. He hadn't admitted it, but I was now certain that he had to be the killer of Marina Radic, She must have known something about the family that jeopardized the Thorns. It was the only plausible motive for her death, even knowing that my desire to live had been reignited these past days, and that spark couldn't be quenched. Until I had concrete evidence Vlad was the killer and I could communicate that to someone, or I could figure out a way to tell Father that didn't risk both our lives, because I was certain that Vlad was willing to kill us, I would keep this a secret. Vlad extended a hand towards me, a mockery of the contract I had made earlier today with Nick. I brushed his hand aside. I won't tell anyone.
Good, glad to hear it. In that case, I wish you and Nick the best.
He ignored my ignoring of his hand and headed towards the exit.
Best be getting back. I'm sure plenty of people are excited to hear how your day went.
It disturbed me how casually he could say that, given he had just threatened to kill me. I followed after him, more disgusted with him than ever before. Vlad Thorn was truly a very, very sad person. I followed after him. No matter what happens, you keep Nick out of this. Vlad laughed.
Don't worry, I will. You don't believe me, but I'm genuinely happy for you, if not extremely jealous. I won't touch him. I'm grateful for him after all. I've got better things to do than babysit you, so I'm glad he can.
Oh boy, unstable air, maybe Vlad isn't the best guy around. What an achievement. We walked back to the mansion, a picture of returning siblings that was not at all emblematic of the conversation we just had. The timing of our conversation couldn't have been worse, given I had just been considering the possibility of telling Nick who I was. Was that worth the risk of my life? Of course not. Of course not. Surely no friendship was worth that. But over the course of the rest of the day, I kept thinking of Vlad's words. I had only known Nick for 2 days, but there was a growing feeling within me that I was not going to let Vlad's threats deter me from my happiness. I did not fear living the way he did. As the feeling grew, the more and more I wanted to stand up to Vlad. Father had failed me, Vlad had failed me, but I got the feeling that Nick would not. And I was definitely not going to fail myself. Oh dear. Okay, I'm gonna end it here for today. So, we had that kind of unstable Vlad almost right from the beginning of her contact with Nick. Yeah, that makes it a bit more clear why she was so sure that he was the murderer. That's very understandable. Oh boy. But yeah, again, very interesting to see her perspective of things, and yeah. But that was it from me for today. As always, I'd appreciate if you'd let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye bye.